this video, we're going to cover the second knight c6, and the positions arise from this move order can be easily reached from the second g6 move order as well. So we will get the same positions after g6 or knight c6. Let's go for it. e4, c5, knight c3, knight c6. Here I'd like to recommend you to stick to our plan and play g3, but if you want to keep all options open, then you should go for knight ge2. Because after g6, then you have all options open again and you can transpose into accelerated dragon with knight c3, but pay attention that black avoided the Marazzi. So g6, d4, take, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, and we transposed into accelerated dragon with knight c3. After knight ge2, of course, knight f6 is another option for black. Here you could go g3 as well, but after g3, the move that I don't like is d5. Take on d5 and knight d4. I think that the f3 square is very weak at the moment, so bishop g2 has to be played, and the pin of bishop g4 pretty much annoys me. So I would recommend you to go knight ge2 only in the case if you want to transpose into accelerated dragon, or after knight f6 to open the game with d4, c takes d4, knight d4, and e5, and transpose into open Sicilians, in this case into Sveshnikov, or classical Sicilian with d6 as well. That is why I'm not recommending at this moment to play knight ge2. But another interesting option for white is to go bishop b5. This option definitely needs to be investigated. I just think that it's very interesting to have it as another option, not to play g3 always. And let me go a bit deeply into the lines. I think that a main move should be knight d4, knight f3, and here black has a few moves. Let's say one is e6, another one is g6, and knight b5. Let's start with knight b5 because after knight f3 we kind of decided on giving up on our light squared bishop, and what do we get after it? Do we give just two bishops just like this? Knight b5, d6. There is no point to kick this knight out with a6 because knight is not ideal on b5 and it should go back anyway at some point. So black should not lose tempo with a6 and play d6, d4, knight f6, and queen d3. We can protect the pawn with the queen. It looks tiny bit awkward, but we don't have the bishop anymore. And good thing is that we are ahead in development. So after a6, black is still bothered with this knight on c5 because he doesn't want to take on d4 directly to allow knight b d4. So that's why a6, knight c3, take on d4 and take on d4 back with the knight. I think that this is a very, very interesting position to investigate, and I would myself play it with white pieces, but this doesn't mean that black is standing worse here, although I think he still has some problems to solve regarding the development, how he should develop, where to put the bishop, and which pawns to advance, e pawn or g pawn. So there's still little problems for black to decide, and if you like it for white, you should definitely investigate it more. If not knight b5 and let's say e6, then after e6 we can definitely stay calm, leave this bishop on b5 anyway and castle. a6, knight b5 would transpose. Bishop d3, knight c6, and b3. This is the way to develop, because we have the bishop on d3 as well, and we cannot go d4 and open up the diagonal for this bishop. But our bishop on b2 would be really very nice. Of course, this bishop, for now, it looks a bit awkwardly placed, but after bishop b2 and plans like rook e1, maybe bishop f1 one day, and thinking on d4, I think white's position looks much more promising. What about the move g6? After g6, I think it's time not to leave this bishop anymore on b5 and go back to c4, bishop g7. And after bishop g7, white can have two options as well. One was played in the game of Caruana against Grishuk in St. Louis 2017. Castle was played there, d6, d3, and knight f6. Now white decided to take on d4, knight d4, cd4, knight e2, and knight d7 was played in the game, after which, after f4, the game ended in a draw, but I think that white has a little bit pleasant position. But instead of knight d7, I think a very strong move would be to play d5. And this is the move which I think that equalizes for black and solves all problems. If we take on d4, then after knight d5, white did not achieve anything, because, well, black does not have any more doubled pawns. The c file is open, and the d4 pawn is strength for black. So I don't think ed5 is an option. Another option is bishop b5, bishop d7, take on d7, take on d7. Now if white takes, if black takes with the queen, which looks like more natural, then it runs into e5. And after e5, black knight definitely has some problems after, let's say, knight g4 to threaten to take on e5, f4, and yes, this e3 square is kind of weak, but the d4 pawn is hanging, and after e5 and f4 the bishop is closed, so there is no good way to protect this d4 pawn. Black can of course try to play knight e3, bishop e3, d takes e3, and pay attention that don't allow d4. It's better to prevent it with c3 and then take care of this pawn with rook f3 or queen c1. Definitely the e3 pawn will be lost. So queen d7 is not good after bishop d7, and knight d7 should be played. E takes d5, knight b6. White wants some tempo because first the knight went on d7, then on b6, and then will take on d5. But still, the position for black looks very, very fine. White can try to play c4 to force black to take on c3, and we can take with the knight or with the pawn. But I think black is doing pretty fine here. So after castle, what bothers me is this move d5 that completely equalizes for black. That is why after bishop g7, I would recommend you to take on d4, and play queen f3 with the tempo to attack the f7 pawn, and to get the knight on e2 without blocking the queen. So let's say knight h6 and knight e2. Afterwards, d3, and the bishop will be open. The queen is, for now, very nice on f3, and I think that this is slight advantage for white. Okay, but definitely if you decide to play bishop b5 in a classical game, I gave you some directions where to look and on what to draw your attention, but definitely it needs more investigation. After knight c6, if you want to transpose into open Sicilian, then you always have an option to go knight f3. And another move, f4, is the move which I would not recommend you. If you watched the introduction video, then you already know why it's not good to go into Grand Prix attack in this move order. It's pretty unattractive because black did not go d6 yet, so black can go d5 in one go. And for example, after f4, black plays g6, knight f3, bishop g7, bishop c4, and after e6, castle and knight g7, there is d5 coming in one go. So d3, d5 is completely fine and good for black. So no f4, and we're left with three options if you play open Sicilian as well, but my main recommendation would be to go g3 here. Although I think that bishop b5 is a very interesting option, fresh option. g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, d3, and d6. Remember I told you in the second d6 knight ge2 video why it was important to go knight ge2 first to provoke knight f6 for neither players, because this is the position where after knight ge2 black has a choice to go knight f6 or to go e6. And as I like to cut down on lines and make it as narrow as possible, I like to avoid the e6, knight e7, not because it's just worse for white or something, but it's nice to have knight on f6. If you can provoke it, then why not? So after knight ge2, if you're interested in what happens after knight f6, then you should definitely check once again the video of second d6 and knight ge2, because we get the same position there. And if not, then we have at this moment, I think, three logical moves for black. One is e6, which will be the main line of this video. Another one is e5, also pretty aggressive and pretty popular move. And another one is rook b8. This is not that much played, but let's cover it first. After rook b8, castle b5, this is the idea for black to get the queenside pawns advanced as soon as possible. We should not allow b4 in one go, so let's do the prophylactic. a3, e6, bishop e3, knight d4. Pay attention that bishop e3, when white wants to develop with bishop e3, knight e2, then he's ready for d4. So when there is such bishop and knight on c3 and e3, then it's somehow automatic for black to go knight d4, because the advantage of knight d4 is that you cannot take knight d4, cd4, because it is a fork. That is why after after bishop e3, black plays knight d4, because otherwise if knight e7 or any other move, white goes d4. Knight d4. Now we want to make this knight uncomfortable on d4, and we will play very nice aggressive move b4. You see, a3 was a very nice move to plan on b4. And moves like knight e2, and bishop a1 would be very, very risky for black, because after queen a1 there is not a real good defense. For example, if you play queen f6, or if you want to trade everything, then after knight c3 we of course don't want to trade anything. We don't want to trade the pieces because we are exchanged down, but black's problem is the advanced pawns, which are weak, and dark squares, and if he wants to castle, then on dark squares he will have big problems. Let's say black takes c takes b4, a takes b4, and plays a6, not to give up any extra pawns, but then a very, very strong e5 opens the bishop. And remember, pay attention that king is still in the center. So after queen e5, then there is another move like d4, and the idea of d4 is that after queen f6 or queen anywhere, I don't know, h5, bishop c6, bishop d7, and knight e4 comes with tempo. If queen e7, then d5, and we open the diagonal, and it's completely crushing attack. If if black goes queen h5, not to allow any knight e4 jump, then white anyway goes knight e4, not with tempo, but the idea is that we want to take on d6 as well, and play d5 to open up the diagonal. And the main point of d4 was to get this queen out of the diagonal, because if we get it out, then we have very strong d5 opening the diagonal with tempo, and when so many pieces are looking to the king and to the center, there is no way that black can survive. So after knight e2, bishop a1, and queen a1, there is another way to protect this rook with f6, but then black has to give up the c5 pawn, and after d takes c5, d takes c5, and bishop c5, I would say that white has tremendous compensation. I would not even say that it's compensation. I would say that white is kind of nearly winning because of the very, very weak king for black and very weak dark squares. Okay. So rook b8 is kind of covered, I guess, and let's take a look at e5, which is another interesting option for black. What he wants is that he wants to develop with knight e7, bishop e6. Maybe one day think about d5 if you're not going to put the knight on d5, and meet f4 with f5. So this is the idea. And after e5, if castle and we lose the tempo on castle, then knight ge7, and we cannot go knight d5 comfortably. So we go knight d5. We should not allow black to develop with comfort and just play whatever he wants. So after knight d5, if black continues with the normal knight ge7, then we want to get our bishop on g5 to have a pin on e7, and this square can be used very nicely for our bishop or the knight. Let's say h6 and bishop f6, castle, f4, and I think that white has very good chances of a nice attack on the king side. But if black decides to go instead of knight g7, knight f6, which is another interesting option for him, then we can take on f6, which I think is more interesting rather than playing bishop g5, h6, knight f6, take everything on f6, queen d2, and bishop e6. Then black wants to castle on long side, maybe think about d5, and any other f4 and king side attack would not make sense for us. So that is why after knight f6, I would recommend you to take on f6, bishop f6, and play bishop e3 with the idea to castle, make f4 and c3. c3 is nice because this square on d4 is quite annoying, but we might plan c3, d4 as well ourselves. Another interesting thing is we can go castle and h5. Not to castle for black, but to try to attack on the king side. Bishop e3, h4, knight c3, we want to get to d5 square. Bishop e6, knight d5, bishop d5, and e takes d5. I think that this position looks quite double-edged, but what I don't like is that after knight e7, white should always be careful with this pawn structure, because we already have the pawn on d5, which constantly needs to be defended, and it's like either you have to control with the d4 square with c4, sometimes there are e4 breaks, but the position is very critical, and definitely I don't think that white is worse. I think that it is very sharp, double-edged position, because the king still is in the center. Black doesn't want to castle on king side, having the pawn on h4. Castling on queen side would be also pretty crazy. So it is very sharp play if white has to take care of the pawn structure, black has to take care of the king and of what he is doing with his pieces. And don't forget, we have two bishops, so this is also an interesting option for white. And after bishop f6, I would recommend you to go bishop e3 with the ideas of castle, f4, and c3, because I think that this is easier rather than the previous position which we saw. All right. Of course, another option is to go bishop h6, not to allow king to castle, but then g5 annoys me a bit. This is it for e5, and let's get back to our main line with e6. And after e6, normally we of course develop and take care of our king, castle, bishop, knight ge7, and bishop g5. This is the line I like the most. Of course, there is another option for white to develop not on g5 but on e3 with a normal queen d2. Remember that we want d4 right now. So after bishop e3, knight d4 should be the move, and queen d2, castle, rook ae1, rook b8, knight d1, and d5. A very normal logical continuation of the position. White is trying to get all his pieces on the king side to create some attack on the king side with f4, g4, and f5. And black is trying to follow the general rule. If you are attacked on any flank, then you should counter-attack in the center. So that is why black goes with d5, and then he can think of b5, bishop b7. I think it's very double-edged position. I would not want to play it with white pieces, to be honest. That's why I would prefer to start with bishop g5. If I provoke h6, then it's a different story, because after bishop e3, I am threatening to go d4, and if you play knight d4, then I have queen d2, and this pawn is weak, so black cannot castle easily because it will be lost. That is why after bishop e3, castle is another option, but after queen d2, king h7, there is a move, a d4, and I always like to have such positions. I think that this is pretty pleasant for white. Okay, bishop g5, and let's say black ignores this bishop on g5, just castles, queen d2, and now what I like is that black cannot go h6 anymore. We still want to get all our pieces on the king side, attack with f4, let's say knight d1, c3, f4, this is our plan, and let's see how we can do it. Let's say knight d4, because it's very logical for black to go knight d4. But after rook b8, this is also another option, because you want to advance on the queen side. Then we can go bishop h6, annoy this bishop, and b5. Okay, probably stronger is to take on h6. Take on h6 and play knight d4, queen d2 back. But I think that what happens right now is in white's favor, more in white's favor rather than in black's favor, because this bishop on g7 was really quite annoying. We always had to pay attention to the diagonal, to b2 pawn, and I think that f6, h6 squares might be used at some point as a weakness, so black has to be careful. It's very complicated, double-edged position. Let's see what happens after b5. After b5, we can take on g7, bishop g7, king g7, knight d1, b4, and knight e3. So we get this position, and you have to remember these ideas of getting the knight, regrouping the knight to e3, because when you get under b5, b4, it's always nice to have the knight on e3 rather than on c3 and be kicked out with b4. If you remember, in other videos we also had maneuvers with knight d5, knight e3, and these same ideas work everywhere. f4, g4, f5, knight g3, h4, the position looks very promising for a good attack. Knight d4 should be played after queen d2, and here I would like to suggest two moves, which is one with a very complicated double-edged play, and this is rook b1. This is my main recommendation, with the idea of rook b8 and b4. I like it very much because white is playing on both sides, on the queen side, and sometimes having f4, g4 on the king side as well. I think that this is a pretty nice position to play. I would recommend you to play it, but if you want something more quiet and more like maneuvering, then you should go for rook a e1, rook b8, knight d1, the same plans. b5, c3, take, b4, and now this is the moment where I understand that I very much prefer to go rook b1 and b4, because somehow black was in time to get what he wanted. He has c3 and b4, so after bishop h6 we definitely have to swap off these bishops because it's pretty annoying. bishop h6, take, bishop h6, rook d2, take, and d5. I think black is completely equalizing. But if you don't want any complications and you want this type of play, then it's probably then it's totally normal to go for it. Another thing that you can do is to play knight d4, c takes d4, knight e2, and play this structure with e5. But now our problem will be a bit the bishop on g5, because after c3, if there was no f6, then things would go normal. But after f6, bishop h6, take, and d takes c3, black is in time to go, for example, after b takes c3, then black's bishop g4 is very annoying. And if knight c3, then bishop e6 with the idea of d5 is pretty annoying as well. So I think that this is equal position for both sides. But after rook a b1, rook b8, and b4, I think that white's play looks much more attractive than black's. Stay tuned. See you in the next video.